Level 47. On the bottom row, there's only one wall. It has to serve to separate these bombs. If it's here or here, one of the bombs would hit two bunnies, which can't be. So it has to be either of these two, which means these have to be empty. Now that means this bunny has to be hit by this bomb, this bunny by this bomb. And we have the same thing in the top row. Wall must be here, therefore not here, not here. That means this bomb hits these two. Two columns with 6 walls can be filled in. That grays out these rows. There must be walls here and here to separate the bombs from the bunnies. That grays out the column. And the same thing here. You must have walls here and here. We can fill in this column with walls. Now this row is gray, and so is this. So we can fill in this column with walls. That grays out this row and this and this. This column has one more wall, which must be here. And this column must have a wall here. That grays out this row. And now the final columns must be filled in with walls. Level 48. We can fill in this column with walls. This bomb must hit this bunny, and all the rest of the bombs must be shielded from each other. Therefore, we must have walls here. This column is grayed out. That means we must have walls here and here. These two columns have 4 walls total. And these walls must serve to block all these bombs from each other. Therefore, the walls can't be in the spaces that are not between bombs. And that leaves us with 2 rows we can fill in with walls. And now this column is grayed out. Now we see there have to be walls between bombs. The bombs that are in corners cannot be boxed in by walls. They have to be connected somehow to this water drop. So there can't be walls here and here. Therefore, there must be walls here to block bombs from each other and here. By the same token, we can't have walls here and here. In this column, we need 2 more walls. If those walls are here, then that means this row would be grayed out, which means there can't be a wall here and here. So we would have to have walls here and here, but that would leave this row with 4 walls. So that means only one of these 2 can be a wall, at most. This cannot be a wall, since this bomb must connect somehow to the water drop, and the same here. That means you have to have walls here. And like I said, we can't have... In this column, there must be 3 walls, which means that either both of these will be blocked, or both of these will be blocked. That means there must be a path from these bombs to these bombs, which means this and this have to be free spaces. That leaves 2 walls in this column, which then must be here. That grays out this column, and we have to have a wall here. There's one more wall in this row, and there's one more wall in this column. Now this can't be a wall because that would box in this bomb. That means this has to be a wall. This bomb cannot be boxed in, so this is not a wall. And the same with this bomb. That means this must be a wall. And we need to have walls between bombs. So this is a wall, and so is this, leaving this a free space. Level 49. We start with these grayed out columns. Now, I have to admit my logic for solving this puzzle is a little lacking. I think what I can do is I can demonstrate that the bombs cannot hit all the bunnies horizontally. Let's assume we can. Then we have to fill in these columns like this. And then these columns are filled in, but that leaves us with a contradiction where these bombs hit more targets than they ought to. In other words, we know that the bombs are not going to go like this. And this is where I have to make a leap of logic, which I'm not entirely sure is valid. Which is that the bombs have to hit each other, has to hit bunnies vertically, like this. Because if this is true, then I can solve it. But I'm not sure I can prove this is true. Only that this is false. But let's go from the potentially flawed premise that the bombs hit vertically. So then these have to be walls, and so do these. It grays out these rows. And yeah, we make this assumption as well. So now this has to be walls. This has to be walls. You have to have walls on these rows. And on these. That grays out these columns. And we have to have walls here and here. And that leaves the rest gray. Now, if someone has a better solution, I'd like to see it. Maybe I'll have to look around. Level 50. This level introduces something new. We have sums here. The sigma indicates a sum. So the sum of the numbers, the rows and columns, we see they're both 39, which means that the question mark rows have to have 0 for the sums to be equal. So we fill in these columns, the question mark columns, with empty space. And now there has to be a wall between these two, which means it can't be here or here. Now this column has 9 walls, which we can then fill in. This row has to have 1 wall in between here, so it can't be here. That lets us fill in this column. And we can also fill in these rows. And these columns are now grayed out. This row has 5 walls. So does this. Now these columns are gray. One wall on this row must be here. The remaining wall on this row must be here. This is grayed out. And there are 2 more walls in this column, which must be here and here. Level 51. Looking at the sums, we see that this has 11 and this has 12. That means one of these question mark columns has 1 wall. We also see that in this column, we have both water drops, which means, I think, that, yeah, that means the wall has to be somewhere here, which means there can be no walls in these 2. Also, this bomb must hit this bunny. And there are 2 walls in this column that grays out these rows. Now one of these is connected to this, and the other is connected to this to make separate zones. And we know there's 1 wall in this column as well as in this column. If these 2 are not connected, the walls have to be, well, there has to be a wall here, which leaves this empty space, which means there has to be a wall here to make the wall not leaky, as it were, and a wall here, because this would have to connect to this and separate it from this. And similarly down here, you would have to have something like this. That means we can't have walls in these spaces. It's either one of these. And for the same reason, you can't have a wall in these spaces. You need to have at least a diagonal. You can see, if you cross-reference these columns and these rows, there has to be a diagonal. And same here. So we have either a diagonal down here or up here. And the same here. And now we can see in this row, 3 spaces left have to be walls. That leaves these columns gray. And now we can fill in this row with a wall, leaving this column gray. And now we see these are connected. So there has to be separation here. Now this is gray. We have to separate here and here. Now these columns are gray. We know there's only 1 wall in this column. So this has to be free space. And 3 walls left in this column here. Level 52. This column is grayed out. See, this bunny has to be hit by this bomb, which then has to be blocked from this bunny, which has to be hit by this bomb. Similarly, over here, this bomb hitting this bunny can't hit this this bomb, so there has to be a wall here, which means there's no wall here. So this bomb has to hit this bunny, and this bunny can't be hit by anything else, so it has to be hit by this bomb, which means this bomb hitting this bunny. This water drop has to be separated from here, since this is connected to another water drop. You can see this column needs 8 walls, which we can fill in. Now this row is grayed out, and we need separation here. This row is grayed out, which means we can fill in this column with 6 walls. This column has only 2 walls. These 2 water drops need to be separated both from this zone and from the middle zone. The only walls that can accomplish that are these, leaving the column grayed out. Now there need to be walls separating these water drops here and here. Now this column is gray, and they need to not be locked in, so this has to be free space. Now these rows of 7 can be filled in with walls, leaving these columns gray. This is gray, so is this. The wall on this row must be here. Wall on this row must be here. And finally, the last space must be a wall. Level 53. I've learned that this doesn't seem to be a water drop. Maybe it's a crystal. Let's call them crystals from now on. Anyway, lots of bombs here that have 0 written on them, which means we have to separate them from these enemies, which are these bunnies, which are only hit by this bomb, and we need to separate them from each other. So let's get started on that. We need to have a wall here. We need one here. We need one here. And here. Here. And that's all the obvious ones, I think. And also the crystal from this bomb. Now let's go row by row. This row has 2 walls, which one of them's here, one of them needs to be here. This and this must be empty. This row has 1 more wall, which needs to be somewhere here, thus not here. That means there needs to be a wall here. Also in this row, 2 more walls. They need to be here, and not here. In this row, 1 more wall, which needs to be here, therefore not here. And in this row, a wall here, and not here. That means there has to be a wall here. The 2 remaining walls in this row must be here and here, therefore not here. And in the last row, a wall here, and one here, none here. We need to have a wall here, separate these, a wall here, separate these, and this column is grayed out. This row has 1 more wall, which is here somewhere, and therefore not here. This row has 1 more wall, which is somewhere here, and therefore not here. This row has 1 more wall, which must be here, and therefore not here. This row needs 2 walls here. Well, one must be here, and one must be in either of these spaces, therefore this can't be a wall. This column has 1 more wall, which must be in either of these spaces, therefore not here. This means we can fill in the top row with walls, since it must have 6. And now this column is grayed out. That means there must be a wall here. The remaining wall on this row cannot be here. This bomb must not be walled in, so this has to be an empty space. That means the wall blocking these bombs must be here. And that grays out this column. And now this row is gray. One of these is a wall, and one of these is a wall. If this is a wall, then we have a blockage. Therefore, this must be empty, and the wall must be here. And up here, we can't have a wall here because that would block in these. So this must be empty, and this must be a wall. If you look at this column, the rest of the spaces must be walls. This can't be a wall, since the wall must be somewhere here. So this is empty, and these must be walls to fill in this column. So now this row is gray. And we see the wall between these two bombs must be here, leaving this row gray. This space cannot be a wall because that would block off this zone. So it's empty. That means there has to be a wall here. And there has to be a wall between these two bombs here. So this row is gray. This row is one more wall, which must be here, graying out this column. And the final space must be a wall.